This is the brief on Pengenel Ruud Gullit. You know, we're looking at a guy who's way more than just a legendary Dutch footballer with iconic dreadlocks. He's literally a tactical genius and pioneer whose influence completely reshaped modern football, both on and off the pitch. First, let's look at his playing career. He was a versatile total football master, kind of like a human Swiss Army knife for football. How often do you see a guy who can literally dominate as a defender, control the midfield, and then go score as a striker? That won him the 1987 Ballon d'Or. He also captained the Netherlands to Euro '88 glory with a famous power header in the final, and anchored AC Milan's legendary Tre Tulipani or Three Tulips trio, alongside Marco van Basten and Frank Rijkaard. Second, we move to his managerial milestones. Arriving at Chelsea in 1995, he promised and completely delivered sexy football. By 1997, he made history as the first black manager to win a major English trophy by lifting the FA Cup. Can you even imagine shifting the entire culture of English football overnight like that? Finally, there's his deep intellectual and activist impact. He bravely dedicated his 1987 Ballon d'Or to Nelson Mandela to raise global awareness against apartheid. Plus, he recently published How to Watch Football, a book teaching fans to decode the game's hidden tactics. It's one thing to have physical brilliance, but another entirely to see the matrix of the game while simultaneously standing up for global human rights. Ruud Gullit wasn't just a world-class athlete. He is a historical trailblazer who forever changed how the beautiful game is played, managed, and understood.
Imagine winning the Ballon d'Or, stepping up to the podium in Italy in 1987, and immediately dedicating the trophy to Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
You don't just accept the award, you instantly trigger this massive human rights conversation across Europe.
Yeah, that is Ruud Gullit in a nutshell. He understood immediately that his platform extended, way beyond the touchline.
Right, which is why today we're pulling from a stack of match transcripts, historical archives, and his own book summaries to really explore this absolute anomaly of a player. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the multifaceted genius of Gullit, not just his feet, but his mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. We want to figure out how a guy who started out playing center back morphed into an elite forward and then revolutionized English football.
Well, to really understand his tactical mind, you first have to respect his absolute physical peak. I mean, at AC Milan, he was the engine of the Tre Tulipani, right?
Strike tulips.
Exactly, alongside Marco van Basten and Frank Rijkaard. But the ultimate statement of his career as an athlete has to be that Euro 1988 final against the Soviet Union.
Oh man, that header.
Yes, the hat.
It just towers into the air and crashes it into the net. It was this massive statement of authority that ended decades of Dutch near misses on the international stage. But here's what I really don't get.
Okay, what's that?
You mentioned he started his career as a defender, which is wild. He's like a Swiss Army knife of football. Did constantly shifting positions give him a cheat code for seeing the entire field differently?
It absolutely did. It was actually his secret weapon. Think about the view a center back has during a match.
Right, you literally see everything in front of you.
Exactly. You spend years learning exactly how attackers exploit space, what makes a defensive line panic, and, how a formation breaks down. So when Gullit moved forward, he wasn't just guessing where the gaps were.
He was reverse engineering the defense.
Yes. He knew exactly what his markers hated, because he used to be one of them, which directly birthed his deep tactical philosophy. He actually lays this all out in his recent book, How to Watch Football.
I love that title.
It's great. And he basically argues that casual fans, and probably you listening right now, are watching the game completely wrong. We just follow the ball.
Oh, wow. Wait, really?
Yeah, because for Gullit, the real game happens off the ball. Whether you're lined up in a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2, those aren't just static starting positions.
Right, they're not foosball players stuck on a pole.
Exactly. They are fluid psychological traps. When a player makes a sprint 30 yards away from the ball, they are dragging a defender with them, stretching the opponent's shape, and creating a passing lane that literally didn't exist 3 seconds ago.
So it's like watching an action movie, but instead of staring at the lead actor's mouth or the explosions in the background, you need to watch the guy quietly planting the detonator.
Yeah.
You have to see the setup.
That is a perfect analogy. You're manipulating the opponent's spatial awareness before the ball ever arrives.
Man, I've been watching sports completely wrong my entire life.
Well, most people do. But for Gullit, he viewed the pitch as this intricate spatial chessboard.
But hold on. If he's this supreme tactician, why was he famously so difficult to manage? 3 weeks before the 1994 World Cup, he literally walked out on the Dutch national squad.
Yeah, that was a massive scandal at the time.
Shouldn't a brilliant player be able to adapt to his coach's system?
What's fascinating here is that when you have a manager's brain, playing in a system you know is fundamentally flawed is just agonizing. He clashed heavily with the coach, Dick Advocate.
What were they fighting about specifically?
Advocate demanded that Gullit play wide on the right, and Gullit vehemently argued against the team's tactics even after they actually won a match against Scotland.
Wait, really? Why complain if you won? I mean, a win is a win, right?
Not to Gullit. Pushing him out wide restricted his ability to read and manipulate that spatial chess match we just talked about. He couldn't blindly execute instructions that violated the spatial logic he spent his whole life mastering.
I see. So for him, bad tactics weren't just annoying, they were a systemic failure he just flat out refused to endorse.
Exactly. And since he couldn't compromise his vision for other managers, he logically transitioned to becoming the boss himself.
Right, which he does, making the move to Chelsea in 1996 as a player-manager.
And he completely overhauls the culture there. He instituted an environment built on trust and extreme autonomy. He mandated that players eat together and openly debate tactics, which gave them this immense mental freedom.
Okay, I have to pause you there. How does having team dinners translate into winning the 1997 FA Cup and playing what he famously called sexy football?
I love that phrase so much.
It's the best. But what's the actual connection there?
It comes down to harmony. If you're going to play fluid, off-the-ball, sexy football, you have to take massive risks. You have to leave your assigned position, trusting that a teammate will intuitively cover the space you just vacated.
Oh, I get it. So by forcing them to bond and debate off the pitch, he forged the psychological safety they needed to take those creative risks on the pitch.
Precisely. And it worked brilliantly. It made him the first black and first foreign manager to win the FA Cup, introducing a whole new era to England.
He perfectly synchronized his off-pitch culture with his on-pitch tactics. We're looking at a true visionary who conquered football across 3 dimensions as an athlete, a tactician, and a pioneer for black managers.
He completely rewired how the game is understood and played at every level.
He really did. But it leaves you wondering about the modern era, because today, football relies so heavily on data. You have GPS tracking every single run, algorithms dictating formations.
Yeah, it's a completely different landscape now.
Exactly. So if Gullit were managing today, with all these spreadsheets at his fingertips, would he embrace the numbers to perfect his spatial chess? Or would he argue that the intuitive human art of sexy football is being completely lost to the spreadsheet? Something to chew on the next time you catch yourself just following the ball.